Sup guys, Synthro6 here and welcome to the 6th episode of Questlog, my daily series as a video journal in which I give out my opinions on pretty much anything that crosses my mind. Uh, Without further ado, let's get to it. This episode is going to be about an important part of gaming history in general, even though it's recent history. It's quite important because it shows you what not to do and what is possible, and that is none other than the PlayStation Vita. So, the PlayStation Vita is something that I bought about 3 years ago. I didn't buy the original one with the OLED display. I bought the new one, a Japanese model, and I got it imported, and I spent a crap ton of money on the memory card, which I absolutely think is bullshit. I think it is the worst thing. It's what killed the PlayStation Vita. But I will talk more about that later on in the video. I want to talk more about my initial impressions of the PlayStation Vita, what they were and what they are now. So initially, I wasn't going to buy a lot of games on the PlayStation Vita. I pretty much bought it for Persona 4 Golden, and I bought it for Digimon Story Cyber Sleuths, which is a game that my friends had hyped up a lot at the time. So I saw it, and if you check the previous episodes, you should know that I am very big into the anime industry, and I saw that it has a lot of Japanese support. So, with that said, that's something that I grew to love about the PlayStation Vita, and it has become one of my favorite systems, period, of all time, because it is different, it is distinct, it is quite different from my PlayStation 4, it's different from my PC, it's different from my Nintendo, it's, well, the Wii, the Wii U, it's different, it's just different. So, first of all, I would like to start with what went wrong with the PlayStation Vita. Why did it drown out? Why wasn't it as popular as it should have been, considering how great it is? So, first things first, the stupid pricing of the proprietary memory cards. I get that they were trying to stop piracy, but at the end of the day, they killed it by making it that expensive. Yes, you can have a proprietary memory card, but if you're gonna make it like that, if you're gonna force people to buy your memory cards, you shouldn't have them be $100 for a 64 gigabyte card, and then you're not only that, you only make it available in Japan. You know, granted that it didn't sell well in the United States, fair enough. But with that said, you shouldn't be charging an arm and a leg for something essential to your system. Because instead of having it be a $199 or a $299 console, it suddenly becomes a $299 and $399 console because you're stuck buying this stupid bullshit memory cards. So that's the first part of this rant. This is why I think the PS Vita failed, because of the mismanagement of the hardware. If you're gonna have a proprietary memory, please try to make it as least consuming of your fans and your patrons' wallets, because at the end of the day, they're gonna speak with their wallets. At the end of the day, if they see that they can download more and use a regular freaking memory card on the Nintendo DS, they will go towards the DS because it's cheaper. That's just how it is. People don't have thousands upon thousands of dollars like some others, like some of you might have it, but the majority of us don't. So with that said, please make it more affordable. For next time, if you're planning on making a handheld, make it affordable. The Nintendo Switch, they did it well. They said, here you go, micro SD up to 256 gigabytes. I still think it should have had more internal memory, but it's not a problem because the micro SDs aren't expensive. They're not very expensive. You can get a 32 gigabyte one for like $10 on Amazon. I just bought one the other day and I put it on my camera, so that's pretty well. With that said, I keep saying with that said, that's insane. The PlayStation Vita, another thing that killed it is the lack of first party support. Now, I'm pretty much just saying what people have been saying for the last 5 years, but this is something that we can all learn from. If you do not have first party support, if you do not have a proper AAA support of content that people are going to want, like let's say an Uncharted, let's say a Crash Bandicoot, let's say something else from Sony like an exclusive Final Fantasy or a Metal Gear Solid, which both of those aren't exclusive to the PlayStation platform anymore, but you get what I'm saying. It needs to have big name exclusives of consequence, which is something that the Nintendo Switch does have, and that's why it's more than likely bound to succeed. That's also the reason why, if you checked out my in hopes and dreams of Microsoft video for E3, you should know my stance on the Xbox One, very similar to the PS Vita. If you do not have content to back up your system, it's not going to sell, no matter how many indies you have. A PlayStation 4 is the proper example of what to do on a gaming console, and look at how well it's selling. It's selling well because it has games of consequence, AAA titles, and it has indie games that are exclusive to the platform as well that people want to buy. So, what does the PlayStation Vita have? It has an insane amount of indies and an insane amount of support coming from Japan, which is why it's not doing as bad as people are thinking it's doing, and why it has such a rabid fan base, because a certain style of game is available in the PlayStation Vita almost exclusively, and it's handled best in the PlayStation Vita. So games like the Legend of Heroes series, like the Neptunia series, like Danganronpa, Freedom Wars, Digimon Cyrus Loops, Persona 4, all of these games are games, big games of consequence that sell systems, and they're only available on the PS Vita, the majority of them. So they also have other indie titles that either first started on the PlayStation Vita or are just exclusive to the PlayStation Vita. Titles like Severed, titles like Titan Souls, titles like they're escaping my mind right now, but these titles are only available on the PS Vita, which I think is amazing, and it's why it still has such a huge fan base. A lot of people tend to buy the games physically because they can't afford to be buying the stupid memory cards like the rest of us guys do. Because personally, I like to download my games on a handheld because I just like to take it on the go. I don't want to have to worry about carrying physical copies, but that's something that I was forced to do. So, you got to do what you got to do at this point. If you like the PS Vita, you got to put up with the bullshit memory prices. We all had to do it. People earlier on in the lifetimes had to do it with the Neo Geo and stuff like that. If you're a gamer, you have an expensive hobby. You're gonna be spending hundreds and thousands of dollars throughout the years, anyways. If you're a big committed gamer, so a couple of extra $100, not even a couple of extra hundred, just another $100, it's not gonna really severely damage your wallet unless you do have a reasonable budget, in which that I feel bad for you. Not because you're poor, but because you're most likely going to have to shell out cash that you might not necessarily have. And for that reason, please, guys, don't become broke because of gaming. It's better to keep your livelihood than to enjoy Persona 4 or 5 or whatever. Let me pull my PS Vita for a second so I can give you an example of the type of games that I have installed on there right now. So as of right now, this is what's on my PlayStation Vita. As of right now, the games installed on it are as follows. Lost Dimension, the first and second Legend of Heroes, Neptunia Rebirth 1, 2, and 3. One Neptunia spin-off, I haven't even touched it yet actually. It was like one of the free ones or something. Or it was on sale, I believe. Blanc vs. Zombies, love that girl. Danganronpa, Grand Kingdom, another excellent. What I find is that the PlayStation Vita really is the home of tactical RPGs and RPGs in general. I think they just work better in a handheld setting. I obviously have Digimon Story Cyrus Loops, I have Severed, Persona 4 Golden, Titan Souls, I have the Metal Gear Solid HD Collection, I think it's the second and the third one, I haven't touched it either. Freedom Wars, I played extensively. Oh, here we go, that's another point I wanted to talk about. The PlayStation Vita is home to pretty much any game you had on the PlayStation 1. And it works well because you don't you're not necessarily lacking in buttons, and a lot of PlayStation 1 games didn't really take advantage of every single button possible on the controller to begin with. So you do have a wealth of PlayStation 1 and PSP titles that are available on there. So here's some of the ones I have on there. I have Final Fantasy 6, Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8. I have the first Metal Gear Solid. I have Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Persona 3 Portable. I have, for some reason, for some godforsaken reason, I have Klonoa Door to Phantom Hill. And that's pretty much it as far as the ones that I have installed. I do have others purchased. I just don't have them installed because, like I said, you gotta uninstall some games in order to run some of the newer ones if you haven't bought it physically. So guys, little hint on the PlayStation Vita, you want to buy as many games physically as you can. So what did I have on there before? So before I had the first Senran Kagura game exclusive to the PlayStation Vita. Do not judge me, internet. Yes, I know that's a weird game. It's awesome though. You gotta try it. It's one of the best. It's one of those Dynasty Warriors style games, but with young anime girls, and that already sounds perverted and lewd enough. So I'm just gonna stop it there. The rest of that series, I moved on to PS4 though because of the memory issues, and it just looks better. And I am not ashamed to play it on the big screen. I have absolutely no shame when it comes to these things. So these are the type of games that I prefer to play on the PlayStation Vita and that most people like to play on the PlayStation Vita. Now, what you notice is that they're overwhelmingly leaning towards the RPG persuasion. Why? Because they just run better on the hardware, in my opinion. You have something like Killzone Shadowfall. No, not Shadowfall. It was Killzone Mercenaries, I think. That it was a first-person shooter and it ran very well on the Vita. But then you have like Black Ops The Classified, which ran horribly on the Vita. So some of those type of games are hit or miss. But if you really want to take full advantage of the PlayStation Vita, you should make it as unique as possible and just go for those games, those indie games, those Japanese games that you just are not available anywhere else. So that's some of the redeeming qualities of the PlayStation Vita. As far as the hardware itself, oh man. As far as the hardware itself, it's actually fairly well designed. It's super comfortable to hold. And now it's sounding like a review, yes, I know. But, you got to talk well about the PlayStation Vita because it severely needs the support. It needs an injection of support, like right now. Because it is dying, considering that Nintendo Switch is looming over its head and it's coming to seal the deal on the PlayStation Vita. While I don't think that will happen because I think they exist on two different spectrums. Like the Nintendo Switch is more for like the quirkier side of Japanese, the cuter side of Japanese, while the PlayStation Vita is slightly more adult oriented or teen oriented, if you know what I mean. It means that you're gonna be seeing a lot of titties on your PlayStation Vita games. That's what that means. Unfortunately, and fortunately, if you go for that, if that's the type of game you want, then fortunate for you. But that's why I decided to talk about the PlayStation Vita, because I want to show people like an important piece of gaming history, and I want to sort of make like a throwback to it. Like, hey, remember when that was a thing? Like, I also want to make one on the PSP. Like, hey, look how this was important to the gaming industry. Back to like the Super Nintendo, the Nintendo 64, the PlayStation, the original Xbox, things like that. I want people to be aware of them because they're important. Just as it's important to learn the history of the United States and the world. If you're a fan of gaming, it's important to know where things started and the roots of which they come from. If you're truly a fan and if you're truly into the industry, you should know that there are certain things that just work better. That when you appreciate it more when you know more of its background. So that's why I decided to cover the PlayStation Vita. That's why I wanted to show you guys my thoughts on it and why I think it's such a great system and why it should exist. So please, if you haven't checked that out already, consider checking one out. If you don't have the money for it, consider checking out some videos of it on YouTube. Try to see if it's your style of system. If it is, go for it. If not, obviously don't go for it. Aside from that, I want you guys to type down in the comments what you guys have in your PlayStation Vitas and what you're looking forward to regarding the future of the PlayStation Vita. Do you play, what kind of games do you, multi-platform games do you play exclusively on the PS Vita, and what you choose not to play on the PS Vita and why? So for example, for me, I play the Senran Kagura games primarily on the PlayStation 4 because there's just no space on the Vita. So at this point in time, the Vita is just getting its own exclusive games, and everything else is going towards the PS4. And pretty much anything that isn't super graphically intense and I won't see any frame rate drops on the PlayStation Vita stays there. Otherwise, it's going on the PlayStation 4. So I want to hear if it's a similar case for you guys, what you guys' thoughts is on that. Why do you think the Vita failed, or why it succeeded? Whether or not you consider its sales and dedicated fan base a success or not. So let me know your opinions. I want to have a conversation with you guys on what the PlayStation Vita means to you, because it certainly means a lot to me. It's something that I use almost every day. I watch a bunch of shows on it as well, and it's perfect. It's perfect. It did everything that I wanted it to do, whether or not it charged me an arm and a leg for it. But that price you make up by doing the PlayStation Store sales, which are almost unbelievable. Sometimes they have sales for no reason. It reminds me of what I see now on the Steam sales, where I find games for like 50 cents or like $2 or $3 that were before like 20 or 30 or $40. So you can always look forward to those. But the downside to that is that, of course, you need to buy the bullshit memory cards, and they could have handled that so much better. Because you like I said, guys, the Nintendo Switch learned from the PlayStation Vita's mistakes and put an actual SD that someone can afford to put in there and to properly expand these games. Aside from that, please guys, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to support my content directly, head on to the Patreon link at the bottom and consider becoming a patron. It'll really help me out. It'll help me pay my bills, and I can make more excellent content for you guys. Aside from that, look forward to chatting with you guys on the comments, and I will be setting up either, let me know what you would prefer, whether a Facebook group or if you want something within Patreon where it's exclusive for our patrons in order for me to chat directly with you guys. I want to have a link with you guys because that was the whole purpose of this channel. I'm here to give out my opinions, and I also want to have a conversation with the people who hear my opinions, because I believe that's important. It's important to be diverse, and it's important to learn things from other people's perspectives. So if you want to keep the conversation going, let me know how I can do that. Aside from that, keep on having a nice day, evening, morning, whenever you are listening to this, whether you're listening to it at the time in which it came out or a couple of years from now. Please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe, and see you guys for the next video. Peace.